All right, we are back. Season finale recap time. It's Brooke and the Bell, Brooke Thomas, Sean Bell, but we have a guest. Of course, we have the guest. We have the person who wrote and directed this final episode, also the showrunner, Prentice. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
We're excited to settle some arguments. I like to be right, and you know.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I watch y'all recap. So I hit y'all. I was like, yo, how I get on this thing? I love watching y'all debate. It's hilarious. So I was like, yo, I gotta get on this.
See, sometimes we get off. We stop the recording and keep going about something totally. It'll be something season 2. But do you remember? It's like
no, because we keep going off on tangents that sometimes have nothing to do with that episode.
Anything.
Like, all right, we got to cut that out because we just went 25 minutes on Lawrence and Issa, and Lawrence wasn't even in the show this week.
Right. But what I do like about y'all, and I think y'all do this better than anybody I've seen, you guys will remember things that happened in other seasons and then like say, but remember they did this, and so it tethers back to something today. And I think a lot of people don't do that. They watch a season as just what it is. And when we write the show, we're having to remember, oh, she's pulling a receipt from things that happened in season 2, because that's how real life is. You remember things that happened. You guys always do a really good job of contextualizing. Oh, but remember in season 1, she said this thing and she said this thing in season 2. You guys are really good about like remembering that.
Well, thank you. I think because we're journalists. So it was kind of like approaching something that's fun as if it would work. So we are watching the episode a bunch of times before we do the recap. We are reading all the tweets from the actors, from the writers, from you. We are watching your wind down. And so I think, we got a lot of information. And then he started doing a rewatch while we were doing this.
Because when I argue, I need to be able to pull things from old.
You do. You be coming with the real receipts. I was like, man, he really.
He didn't remember how ashy Lawrence was season 1, and he had to go back because he didn't believe it. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Let's get started. Okay.
Let me start off right away with this question for you. Now, you guys do a great job of writing people's characters, and I think staying true to their characters.
Mm-hmm.
And do you ever think to yourself, because I saw you tweet out, we don't pay attention to what the fans may think of them. We write so we stay true to their character.
Yeah.
But I know you rewatch. So do you ever say to yourself, wow, I didn't know folks was about to hate Molly like this?
On the Molly side, yes. We did not anticipate. No, because again, to the points that we were saying, that like we're thinking about their friendship in its totality, not just like these little moments, right? So I think what we realized in hindsight was that because they never, like to the point we're talking about like picking sides, right? Well, typically on our show, you've only picked like, am I team, it's always been the guys. Am I team Lawrence, team Daniel, team Nathan, whatever. But you've never had to pick between Issa and Molly. Like they may have had little scuffles, but you're not really like, oh no, there's a clear rift of like what's happening in this friendship. And I think what we didn't probably anticipate was that naturally the show is shown through Issa's point of view. So the audience will probably inherently just, even if there's even subconscious of it, pick her side. And I think Issa's character is much more willing to admit she makes mistakes and you can kind of see her be awkward and clumsy, whereas I think Molly's much more guarded. So it's hard to empathize with somebody who feels they're protecting themselves. And so I think in hindsight, we probably should have made it be more 60-40 Issa's fault than like a straight split. Because for us, we were like, Issa's not the best friend all the time. Like she is always like, she's tricking Molly into going to like, if you think of like in the pilot, she's tricking Molly to go to Maverick's flat. She gets on stage, raps about Molly's issues. She has Molly run interference for her with Daniel and Lawrence to the point of these receipts, right? She tricks Molly to come into the wind down. She tricks Molly into coming to Coachella. She tricks Molly into going on the lift ride with her. She stay needing money. She stay needing help. I was like, she went to Nathan's house when he ghosted on her and lied to him. No, I'm just saying, like, and people go, Molly's, and I've seen tweets of like, Molly's toxic and Molly's a fake friend. I'm like, what? Molly is a writer. So this idea that like Molly is all, and then the canceling of Molly, this cancel culture, I was just like, people don't cancel people in real life. Like people stay with people that cheat on them, beat them, take money from them, and people don't get rid of these people. So this idea that like Molly's this toxic person, I was like, where is this coming from? What? I just had not seen that Molly. So I was like, I get Molly has faults and Molly has issues. But this, I was like, yo, this was, I think my theory on top of the Issa thing is I think more people are Molly's than they care to admit.
No, oh my goodness.
And they're seeing themselves and not liking it. I think there's some of that, but yeah, I mean, that's my theory. So I don't know.
My ears. Mm-hmm.
No, I had already conceded to the fact that when both of them throughout this season specifically, like in this specific argument, were wrong, equally wrong. And you were right. You pointed out that we just like Issa. This is like a total different, but it feels like such a continuation from Awkward Black Girl. We like Issa. Issa is kind of technically, I guess, like the star of why we started watching this, why we were interested in it. And so when both people are equally wrong, you pull something else. And it's just the fact that Issa, we just go in liking Issa, which has been shameful because then you're reminded of all of these times. Like, how did I forget how mean it was to get up on that stage at that? How did I forget that?
Yeah.
That was friendship ending more than anything else that I had seen. That was so mean.
She told Molly in season 1, episode 7, are you just jealous because I can keep a nigga? Like, think about that. She said that out of her mouth to her best friend.
Right.
And all her friend did was like help her not get caught. Yeah. I'm just saying, when we look at these things, it's like, I was just like, when people were saying Molly's toxic, and then I was like, y'all need to go somewhere. Y'all need to rewatch the whole series.
I've been team. I've been trying to tell Brooke. I've been team.
Issa accountability.
Keep Issa accountable, right? So the whole time, people say, "Oh, you're Lawrence Hive or you're Molly Hive," but I'm really like, I'm sick of Issa's fans, and it's almost like I'm almost like, and I love Issa, the actress and writer and everything, and I love Issa, the character on the show. But because we love her, we give her passes, and
for sure.
It just the whole accountability issue throughout whatever situations she's in.
Yeah.
Folks just pick her side, and it kills me.
Yeah, no, we were talking about that in the room a lot. I mean, now they have all made mistakes. I think one of the things that we were wrestling with this year, one thing that we wanted to address is like, look, they've been friends since they were 18 years old. They met at as a freshman in college. So like, that's a long time to know somebody, 12 years, 13 years. And so, part of the beauty of their friendship is they know everything about each other, right? So there's a shorthand. You don't have to explain. It's like, girl, I know what you're thinking. But the other side of that coin is you know everything about them. So all the mistakes they made, all their issues. So you kind of I think both of them had a hard time seeing themselves grow. And I think, like a lot of people, you take kind of advantage or you don't appreciate this friendship that doesn't come along every day. And I think they have gotten comfortable, like any relationship, whether it's a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, they have gotten comfortable in their dynamics and taking it for granted that these friendships come along every day. And I think what we're trying to show in the finale is that, Tiffany's fragile, that marriage is fragile, that marriage is fragile, and these friendships are fragile. You know what I mean? And they're not to be taken for granted. So I think that was the arc that we were trying to take them on. It's like, hey, these things don't fall off trees every day in terms of having people in your life who are like that.
There was so much going on in this finale. Okay, let's get right into it. Let's get started. What did we start with? We started with, was it
the farmer's
Lawrence
market.
Lawrence going, like they were talking about him getting ready to go to San Francisco, right?
Yes, he just got the job. Yeah, he had just got the job. And originally,
that's right.
A small nugget. The episode wasn't supposed to start that way. Originally, we were leaning in more into this sort of docuseries version of the episode. So it was really supposed to be mimicking like Looking for Latoya, like Looking for Tiffany. So originally, the cold open was a scene of the chaoticness outside the bus. You were just coming into like all this yelling and you didn't know where, and the cop going for his gun. You didn't know what was happening, and it was sort of like chaotic. And it worked I think in theory, probably more than it worked as a thing. But that was really how it was supposed to start. So that's just a little small nugget that like most people will never.
LaToya, where is LaToya?
Where is LaToya?
I don't know.
Also, having Ray J be a part of anything is always such a pleasure for me.
He was great.
And I feel like, I mean, Ray J is my comedy king. He is
great.
Funny, and he never really means to be as funny as he is, and I enjoy it. And that was just like such a perfect little like, what? We get Ray J too? Yeah. Come on.
And there's so much footage of him that's just that's just priceless. He was so funny. I mean, they were all funny. Candy was super funny. Carl Payne was funny. I mean, it was shooting those shows within the shows are great too. So anyway,
that's so much fun.
You off your tangent, huh?
How do y'all pick that? Like, how do you say?
That's
or
true,
I don't know if you already just have connections, but how do you sort of pick like? Do you have a direct way of saying, I want to highlight, because that's how it feels to us. Like you are highlighting greats that don't get their just due.
So it really varies project to project. So like when we did Due North, that is, and all the shows kind of happen as like bits in the room. Like we don't ever know going into the season what the show is. We kind of, something happens and we go, oh, that should be the show within the show. So like for Due North, the whole origin of that show was that we had two writers. One is a Black woman and one was a white guy. And they were just happened to have lunch like in the middle of the quad at Sony Studios. And we just happened to see them and we were making all these bits that they were having like a secret rendezvous of a lunch. And they were just having lunch. But we started making these bits of like, oh, she was like the runaway slave and they're sneaking away, having this sort of torrid affair. And like Scandal was popping at that time. So we just pictured what would be like a slave scam. Like we just used our two writers and really also their last names. So his last name was Dugan and her last name is North. So it was like, oh, what would that show be called? It was really like Due North. And then we just ran with the bits of like this sort of Scandal version of slavery and making fun of it. And so, and the Kevin of last year was they were making all these reboots, but they weren't making any Black reboots of shows. And we just thought like, what the hell? Like, why not? So we said, well, let's make our own reboot of the show. So we wanted to see the original Kevin, which was like based on Martin and Living Single and all those things. And then we said, well, let's do our version of a reboot of a show that never existed. We just thought that was funny, to just reboot something that didn't exist and to just see the differences. And so we had Kim Fields come in and direct them because she knew all that stuff. And we reached out to Bill Bellamy and obviously Erica Alexander and all those guys. And, you know, they were just awesome. So it just sort of happens.
That's dope.
This is what happens when the showrunner, people always like they think like representation is about like identity and it's like a form of identity politics and it's just cosmetic. But this is how you get Ray J.
That's how you get Ray J.
You know what I mean? That's like you have somebody who's making decisions, have a crew, a team of people who are making decisions who actually know what they're talking about. They live what they're talking about. Yeah. And our business, Sean, it fails at that tremendously. But so it's nice to see it's nice to see like little things like that we don't get to experience in other shows. And even specifically sometimes in other shows that are supposed to be catered to us, we still don't get to see just like everything is something that you get, every little bitty thing. So that was nice and fun to see. Okay, so Issa and Lawrence are doing great. She teases that she would be willing to move.
Yeah.
He kind of like, it seemed like he was kind of like inching towards asking that in a cool, I support you way though. And it was nice to see. My smile had carried over. I've been smiling for 2 episodes, like just like watching with a smile on my face. I've been saying, I thought the kind of like closure, which became like New Beginnings episode, I thought that was, after watching it, I was like, oh my God, this is my favorite episode. And then I remember the Coachella episode is like unstoppable laughter every time I watch it. So they're like tied at the top. But then the first 5 minutes of last week's episode could be, I mean, it was just like magic for me. It was so fun to watch. And this was kind of like a continuation. I'm still smiling. It's enjoyable. It's fun to watch. But then there was anticipation. Like I'm wondering, is she going to talk to Molly? I don't watch the teases.
Okay.
So I never have any idea going into each episode.
I like it that way.
And,
personally. Yeah. I like that. Like,
so,
I'm the type who if you saw something before, a movie, don't say a word. Don't even tell me if it's good or bad. I want to know nothing.
That's great.
And the show, and it's 30 minutes. And it's a week. I can wait. And I do. And also, whenever I watch a trailer, I tell myself, so I create a story that has nothing to do with what's going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
And so, I don't and it started just because it was kind of hard to find on my iPad. And then I realized I liked it better that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we're going in. Everything looks good. We thought last episode that Condola was out of here. It was over. We kind of cheered about that for a little bit because everybody on Twitter was making me nervous. Turns out everybody on Twitter was right, and that's fine. I'm getting over it. I'm working through it. Oh my God. Molly and Andrew. Yes. Because I think that part is really important too. Molly and Andrew, it is really easy to blame Molly because we're watching and we're seeing from the outside, right? We're seeing how Andrew is obviously so like affected by her, what appears to be selfishness, but he is not as communicative as one would think he would need to be. And that all came out at the very end. And I don't know if I can 100% blame her for not reading his mind. She's not a horrible person. She's not intentionally being selfish, but he's being bothered by things that he just kind of like keeps a list of.
Yeah.
But he's not communicating. We didn't see it. And so like for the first couple of times that like these kind of issues have come up, we were just assuming maybe they're talking about them off camera, maybe. But at the end with the breakup, it's like, no, wait a minute. She's blindsided, which is partially her fault because you could like attempt to be like a little more selfless to your partner on your own. But also she asked for something. He says, yes. Right.
We set it up in the beginning that he doesn't communicate great, you know, and the second episode, she's like, I'm trying to get through to you and it's hard, you know, and he goes, yeah, I need to work at it. And, you know, he did a little bit, didn't enough and didn't assert himself enough in things. I mean, you know, you're trying to always balance. So it's not just like Molly's this like, you know, like movie villain where she's just sort of acting crazy or doing these irrational things. It's like, it takes both people to be a part of that. And that's one of the things I think we want to explore in season 5 with her and that situation. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, how do you take ownership or do you take too much ownership or not enough ownership? You know? So I think Molly's thing was like a little bit of a classic too little too late a little bit. And, you know, but yes, no, he doesn't communicate great.
Was it a situation where you knew right away that it was Andrew's the type of person that's going to tally things up? Or were you waiting for a moment to say, he's going to not explode because he didn't explode, but then finally throw in the towel and said, I've had enough?
We always was like, he's a guy who holds back emotionally in a little bit of a ways because we hadn't really seen.
So like average.
Thanks.
Like a lot of guys don't always.
Yeah, this show's realistic. I mean, that's what we like about it.
That wasn't even necessary. You know what I mean?
I know it wasn't. I'm sorry. The Lord is not through with me yet.
He's working on all of us.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
But no, we did want to play this idea that like sometimes guys hold it in, and then it's like, yo, like, you know, we're not always the most communicative, and not to blanket statement, but you know, sometimes you don't want to feel like. You don't want to seem like soft, like, yo, pay attention to me. You just don't want to seem like you like, I'm that, whatever. You know what I mean? So, that's not necessarily great that he's not like that, but it's real that he's like that. So, because I feel like a lot of the guys in our show, like Lawrence is very aware of his emotions, and he doesn't necessarily mean he addresses them well, but he definitely is like, understands if he's feeling something, he doesn't hide from that. But you know, Alexander's a different, I mean, you know, like Nathan's a different guy, and we wanted to see what it was like with that kind of a guy.
I love this. You like talking about Nathan. Did you feel like, Sean, because your biggest complaint also...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say Andrew, sorry.
Yeah. I knew what you meant, but then it reminded me of Nathan, and I wanted to talk about that because Sean did not like that Nathan was bagging on Lawrence a little bit. And also because Sean, he doesn't like to admit how heavy he is into team, like in the Lawrence hive. He doesn't like. He likes to say it's all about like he's accountable.
You know, dude's dirty, Mac. You know,
they do, and he hated that.
Exactly. Like it wasn't anything that to do with Lawrence. You don't dirty Mac. That's all I was saying. You don't dirty Mac.
But he cleared it up. Did you feel good about that? Like he apologized.
I felt fine. You know what I mean? Most dudes will dirty Mac and never say anything.
Right.
So that's fine. But at the end of the day, we all know Nathan doesn't want to just be friends. So he's just an individual who's going to stay under there until he can swoop in. We all know that guy. And Nathan is that guy.
Nathan is so unbelievably likable, and you hate him, and it's fascinating.
I don't hate Nathan. I just see what he's doing.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
Referring to him as, I mean, Issa's a likable person.
Prentice, am I wrong?
I will say that he definitely knew what he was doing by dirty macking Lawrence, for sure. Because I mean, low key, I've done it too. So like, are you with him? Really? Okay.
It was in a little bit like the Spider-Man meme though, like when he said it, like from Issa's point of view, like
yeah,
wait a
that's
minute.
why Issa called him out. That's why Issa called him out. Like you ghosted.
I know you're not talking.
Yeah.
Right. So.
But he owned it. He owned he was hurt. He owned he was hurt.
And he was human, and that was my thing. He was being human. It was a weird shot. It led to a very important conversation that it was weird that they hadn't really deeply had to begin with, but that matches Issa's a little bit of an avoider. She'll go with whatever you want to go with. And I just really liked how, at least towards the end of the season, how it obviously their relationship doesn't seem wrapped up, but I like how it was tied up.
Yeah.
He is, and this season so far, he's just kind. I don't know. I'm looking at Sean's face because he's like, all right.
Well, no, I was gonna ask a quick question in regards to what we talked about before with Yvonne and Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
I mean Molly and
Molly, which is very important.
not even, some people can't separate,
which is very important, exactly,
because of the character Molly. But some people took it as the relationship ended there. I took it as we don't know yet. Everything's up in the air. Okay, so it's supposed to be we're lost and we don't know what's going to happen from here.
Yeah, it's supposed to be that question is out there. We didn't want to answer it yet.
Okay.
We wanted him to say, are you just, I think whatever the question, like, are you just wanting me for me, or like, do you want the relationship, or do you actually want me, and what are you fighting for? And we just wanted that hanging out there. You know, I mean, I would say they're definitely not in a good place. And I think you could be fair to say they've broken up, or that question is still hanging out there for her to come back to an answer, or them to come back and answer.
They are definitely not in a good place, but when is the last time they have been?
They haven't been in a good place at all. I think on the trip is where it went. Because to me, what I think we always liked in the room was this idea that I think Andrew felt, which is, because she's very dismissive of him about the brother. She doesn't want to be in it. It makes her uncomfortable. So I'd rather just like not deal with her. Whatever, it's your problem. That if he's witnessing her in real time throw away her best friend, that's what he's watching, right? So if you're Andrew, you certainly would be like, well, if you're throwing away your girl, or like willing to like let this go, how will I factor in when it gets tough with me? And that's a fair, we always like that question, whether or not we never addressed that as a written line, but it was a thing that we always talked that Andrew could be thinking.
That is so interesting. I never even really thought about that, but I think that's a really human thing too, though. Like, you see somebody go through something that you don't totally agree with, and while you're being supportive, it's in the back of your mind.
It's like Brooke, if you saw a guy treat his mom bad, like, what do you think?
Oh.
How are you thinking he's going to treat you, or he'll let the kid, you know what I mean? It's
right,
kind of like,
for sure.
Like if you'll do your mom like this, then like me, you know what I mean? So I think those were the things we wanted to say, is that he was able to see, oh, the people you love in your life, you're willing to, and we had talked about in the room. I mean, even the Dr. Rhonda says, like, when you feel slighted, you cut off your dad, you cut off Issa, you're cutting off these people when you feel hurt. And that's sort of how you deal with hurt. You sort of just cut the limb off, because I don't want to feel the pain. And I think that's a sad place for Molly. So for us writing it, we always try to write from that sort of empathetic place, that this character is dealing with, and like, how do we sort of wrestle with that? That's a way, that's her defense mechanism, is to cut people off because it hurts too much.
Let's talk about Tiffany.
Yeah.
Because this was something really important to Sean. Earlier in the season, you had said that this is something that you wanted to see play out. And I think I didn't expect this to play out in such a big way. I would have been fine if this carried on into next season, because there's so much going on. And so it was nice to see us get to see something. And we talked a little bit back and forth earlier, Sean. We were like pre-planning, just kind of like a pre-show chat. And there has been a lot of conversation online about this not being realistic. And I think from the mothers that I've talked to, it was actually more realistic than what you normally see. People are used to like seeing it play out, and like the mom is trying to drown the babies or something, just like very dramatic and scary. And traumatic, but it is very often quiet and not as noticeable to people who have their own lives, and to, you know, the father, and who is also a new father. And he's trying to be a good husband and a good father. And she also can't put a finger on it herself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
thought it was.
everyone knew that she was struggling, but it was very easy that it looked like she just had a baby. Of course she's struggling.
I think it was very realistic, and I'm somewhat of a new parent myself, so very realistic to say, when you have a bunch of friends that don't have kids, maybe single or whatever, that, yeah, they may think, oh, so-and-so is struggling a little bit, but they don't know postpartum. They don't know how to pinpoint it, and they're worried about their own lives. So that's why I was sort of like, this is very realistic in a subject that people don't really touch upon on TV. So that's why I was really interested in that whole storyline from now and forward, because obviously, you know, it's something that's just not going to go away. So what made you guys handle it the way you handle it in saying, okay, this is how we're going to show, and this is because you can break down in all different type of ways. So what made you go, she's just going to get away?
I mean, I think we talked about it as we have, you know, mothers in our writer's room, and I have 3 kids. And I remember when my wife was going through with our first child, and there's all degrees of it. I think to your point, everybody thinks it's either I'm totally fine or I'm drowning my kid. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's not. It's like, there were times that my wife just wasn't feeling super connected to our kid. There were times where she was feeling like, I'm not a good mother. Like, I just need to, like, get away for a second. Like, that's real. And I think a lot of the responses I've gotten online from moms who were dealing with this were like, thank you, because it's all varying degrees of that. And I think she just was feeling like, and I think too, it's, to your point about character, it's character specific, right? So, like, again, the things that we think about is Tiffany's this character who wants to portray everything as always perfect all the time, right? It's fine, right? That's her character, right? I need to be in this friend group. I'm the most polished. I'm the most, like, I'm married. I have a good job. Like, I'm the most kind of together, right? And even if she's been touting even if nobody's asked her to be that, she has made herself that, right? So in her mind, she thought this, and you see in season 3 when she, like, has that baby shower with all the Serena paintings of herself, you know, and all these things where she thought coming into this was going to be like all fun, and she had this vision of what it was supposed to look like, and it's not matching that. And so we wanted to take, well, what would a character do who's supposed to always be perfect and always has it together, is wrestling with this image of, like, I don't feel that close to my daughter. Who would she go to? Does Tiffany feel like she can be vulnerable to a lot of people because she always portrays this image that she's perfect? And so we wanted to say, like, what is the internal struggle of that character? And also, my girls aren't even around right now. They're fighting. I don't even have, like, an Issa and a Molly to even talk to about this. Like, my whole friend group is, like, up in the air, and I don't want to share this with my husband. I don't want him to think I'm weak or I can't handle something. So she doesn't have a lot of, like, outlets to share with. And so we wanted to say, well, what does a character like that do? Like, she might get more drastic. She might do things that are more impulsive, that are out of character. And so for us, that's what because we're trying to take in the totality of somebody, not just like, oh, this is how you deal with it if you're going through it. So that was really what's going through our mind of, how do we do it with this character? But again, also, it's not the Tiffany show. So you're trying to balance how much of that storyline weighs in the world when you have Issa and Molly and all the things they're going through, you know, and obviously you have Lawrence or whatever. And so you we're only a half-hour show, so you can only devote so much time to that issue. So obviously we're not a documentary. We're not a public service announcement about this issue. We're just saying, hey, these are issues that Black women don't typically get to say they get to experience, right? You know, we sort of teed up Tiffany saying, oh, they didn't believe my pain in the hospital, which we know doctors don't believe Black women in pain and those types of things. And so, Serena almost died because they didn't believe, you know what I mean? So it's like, if it happened to Serena, it can happen to anybody, you know? And so, again, we just want to talk about these things and put issues and highlight things that, again, don't typically get talked about in other arenas. So that's sort of how that played out.
You
love that.
Quick sidebar question, because you brought up characters in the writing room. What's the discussion like? Because you guys do a great job of making sure a character stays within who they are. Are there ever just, like, disagreements on how that character would react in different situations?
Oh, all the time. 100%.
How do y'all break that down where you're like, because even me and Brooke argue and we'll talk on our side chats like, no, a Lawrence or a Molly or this person would act this way. So how do you come to a conclusion like, no, a Tiffany does this, a Molly does this, etc.?
I think by now, because we've had a lot of the same writing staff from the very first season, like we've had at least around 50% of the same people. So people kind of know what is in that character's wheelhouse. What we will do is, though, we no longer really say this character won't do something, right? What we'll say is, if this character's feeling this, how would they feel it? How would that come out? And sometimes it's how would it come out comedically? Sometimes it's how would it come out dramatically? Sometimes it's what's an unexpected way it might come out. And it really just depends situation to situation and episode to episode, and what have we seen before, and what is something that we can explore that's new. So there's never like a carte blanche, this is the right, like this is like the uniform process. It's really discussion, and sometimes it's a snowball process of, wow, this is an interesting, it could come out this way, but what if they're experiencing this, but what if it comes out a different way? What if it comes out an unexpected way that we didn't see? Or what is it a way that we just want to get right to the heart of it too? So a lot of it's just, to be honest, feel. Because sometimes we look back and we go, oh, we probably should have done this differently. You know what I mean? All you have is the instinct in the moment, and that's really all you can go to. But sometimes we've been on set and been like, nah, this isn't right. Like, we need to actually like adjust this now. And we've done that too up until filming. So it really is just, because sometimes Issa and I will edit and we'll be like, oh, I think we're hitting this too hard. Let's actually, when we film next week, let's actually pull back on this. So it really kind of varies thing to thing.
Okay.
What about, so speaking of the Tiffany, kind of like the search for her, which was great. And it also was another one of those little breadcrumbs of like, that I was like, I'm not falling for it this time. Issa and Molly giving each other the look. Molly was kind of disappointed that Issa didn't want to search together. At least it's what, like, how I saw like in her face when Issa was like, no, let's split up. And she seemed disappointed, but it was like, yo, last week you kind of ended things. And, but it was kind of like when Molly brought Issa food at the block party, when they did the wobble together, when they joked around at the diner at Mel's, and then when they weren't at Mel's, they were at
Hands.
Yeah. And then when they were playing the goofy game at Andrew's house, and then every time I get hopeful, there was nothing, so I was like, I'm not gonna buy it this time. But it was nice to see they were all three of the women, when Derek found Tiffany, how emotional everybody was, and how you could just see like how Molly and Issa, how they're looking at each other, and how they were talking to each other at Tiffany's house when the search kind of began. So that was nice. It was a little bit of like me fighting my hope, but I'm curious because we're in such a like weird space right now. And this show was obviously shot a long time ago, edited a long time ago. The very tiny police scene, did you second guess that now, or were you hopeful that people would see it in a different light? What was your I guess like process for having that there?
I mean, it's funny because we shot that scene in December, right? And so,
right, a long time ago.
I mean, the truth is, Black people dealing with cops that way will never go out of style. I mean, I hope it will go out of style, but to that point, it's a universal thing that we all feel, or at least had been feeling. So it didn't feel, when we were filming it, again, so much of my film time wasn't about that. Really, when we were filming, you're all trying to get like the right level, and obviously he has a joke where he's like, "Not me, not today," which I wish more police officers had that mentality. But
they'd be ready.
You know, in the moment, I was like, it was 4:00 in the, we had been filming. I had to be wrapped up by 5 in the morning when sunlight was coming up. So my mindset was just like, I need to get, because it's so much chaoticness. I mean, we're filming on a bus in the middle of downtown, all these traffic, all this, it's just so much chaos that I was just like, I need to make sure I get my shots, right? Because I'm thinking from that perspective. I wasn't thinking so much while I was filming it. I will say, going up into the finale, I actually forgot about that scene. I totally forgot, because I was thinking more about the pregnancy.
It's a very small part, yeah.
It's such a small part. But watching it, it was weird. It was really weird and uncomfortable watching, even though I know how it's gonna play out. But that moment when he does go for the gun and the thing where you're like, it's just an argument, and you're just like, yeah, that's kind of how it happens. And that when he went for the gun, it threw me for a second, because I was like, yeah, that's exactly. And to see what's happening in Atlanta and obviously all over the country in this way was disturbing. So it definitely, but I had kind of forgotten it, so it did kind of catch me again, kind of off guard a little bit, yeah.
So do you want to move on to the part that Sean has been itching to talk about?
I'm just hurt. That's all. I'm hurt. You know what I mean? Like, I'm hurt. So, first of all, we both said it's over. There's
We
no
thought
more
we were done. It
Condola.
was she was that
It's
she
a
was
wrap.
done.
Good.
Twitter
We
was
all see the
wrong.
faces.
Hello,
It's
yes.
about to be a dream scenario for my man Lawrence and my girl Issa. So when he comes in and he has you like he did a great job because even before he said anything, there was water in his eyes. And I was just like,
Yo, I knew something was up.
oh.
I thought I was tripping because when she kissed him, he like it wasn't as emotional and cutesy as they had been. It was just like he got kissed. And I thought I was tripping.
Listen,
And I wasn't.
I've been in the scenario of having to tell bad or effed up news, and right when you like how your heart feels just driving over there, walking in the door, watery in the eyes, it's like I knew right away. I said, "Oh, it's about to go down." But
I wasn't sure yet.
first, let me ask you, because we talked before about how it was shot.
Yeah.
Your decision making to go back and forth between him talking to Condola and him Lawrence telling Issa what's going on.
The conversations happened at the same time for the viewer. And we were receiving so much different information. And sometimes one person's answer was given to both in both conversations. It was cool.
Thank you. Yeah, originally we had written a scene in our early draft where it was really supposed to be Lawrence comes over, says I need to tell you something, and then we see the Condola scene, the whole scene. Everything that got intercut was all one moment, and then you were coming back to the present day. And it just it was much more linear of how that was being told. And it just kind of felt like not that interesting as a dynamic. And so I pitched, well, what if, in the writer's room, I said, well, what if each question is being answered by the next person in the next scene? And in some way, you get to see two different Lawrences. You get to see the Lawrence that's like pissed off with Condola, and then you get to see the Lawrence that's like super empathetic to Issa, which also might make you, which is real. Like he's finding out news and then he has time to process and he's delivering news, right?
I mean, we've seen both those Lawrences before too. It was very realistic for me.
Yeah, it was very realistic.
Yeah.
And so it just became an interesting visual. It became an interesting way to tell that story, and it became an interesting way to like do it visually. And so one of the things that we were drawing on, or I was drawing on from a visual perspective, was a great scene in Mo Better Blues where Denzel is sleeping with both of the women, and he's having a conversation with both of them as they're questioning him about because I think he had bought them the same dress. And he's having sex with them, and he calls one the wrong name, and now he's like going back and forth in the conversation, explaining himself. And every time you're like going to a new woman, and I just remember that I was like, oh, that's a cool way to do it. And so on this one, I was like, well, how do we elevate it, right? And so because I think Spike just kind of did like shot to shot, and so for me, I was like, well, what if the angles are always changing a little bit? So if you're in like a profile shot of Issa asking the question, and let's pick up in a profile shot of Condola answering or Lawrence answering, or if we're in like a French over or whatever kind of shot we're in, we can kind of be going back. So we're kind of staying in the visual frames also. And so, I had to carefully craft out what part is what and which shot is building to that one. And it was, so I'm glad it worked. But I remember watching those scenes on set, and they were hard. They were heartbreaking. I mean, you could hear a pin drop on set.
It was devastating.
Yeah. It was real sad to watch.
I was dead silent as the credits were rolling and passed. I said, no, they did not do this.
Honestly, the second time I watched, I wanted to fast forward it. Like I was like, I don't know if I can do this again. I don't know if my heart can take this again. I just watched it last night.
So what
it was really painful.
What was the
decision? Yeah, it was real.
What was the decision making on this being the outcome?
The decision process was, as we were talking about Lawrence and Issa, one of the things we always talked about was this idea that like, can like a man forgive like a woman for cheating and take her back? Like women take guys back all the time, but dudes sometimes may not be like, nah, like you're done. And so
they do all the time. They just don't tweet about it. I mean,
personal experience.
No.
So I ain't gonna mess with that. But so y'all are just better. Y'all are just better. But so we were saying that like it always felt not uneven. That's the wrong way because there's not like there needs to be an even thing. But we were saying that like Lawrence is coming out of this pretty clean. Like if you think about where he started in the pilot, where he's like working at Best Buy to like now he's got a great job in San Francisco and he's like doing well financially and obviously JL is a super handsome, so you got all that. And it felt like Lawrence needed something that was like, and he's also a character to your point that doesn't handle adversity well, right? When situations go left, he doesn't always process it great. And so if you remember in season 2 in the finale, there's a moment where Issa has a fantasy, as you guys are aware, like what her life is going to be like with Lawrence if they get married, right? They're going to get married, have a baby, all these types of things, and then she realizes it's a fantasy. So we said, well, what if this idea that like, if the fantasy doesn't look like how you thought, is it something you still want to work towards? Because Issa says in this season, when she's on the episode 8, when she and Lawrence going back at the dinner, she goes, I learned happiness is a choice. It's not something that just sort of randomly happens to you. You have to choose to be happy, right? And so we wanted to say, well, what happens? Can we put that theory to the test? Can we put their happiness being a choice to the test? And what would be a scenario where if everything is all great, sure, but what happens when their boat gets rocked? They as a couple don't always do great. So we wanted to explore this idea of, well, what if the fantasy doesn't match the reality? Is this something Issa can still love? Is this a scenario that Issa can choose her happiness in? Because for a lot of people, and we also feel like, Lawrence is 33, 34 years old, like the idea of never having a pregnancy scare and never having any of this type of thing ever happen to him. Not that it happens to all of us, but to the idea that it never has happened. So we just thought that was an interesting thing to explore specifically for these two characters.
So you wanted people to hate Condola, basically.
They didn't need the help.
I don't know why
Didn't need the help. Just done with her at the block party, okay?
Condola has been, I feel bad for Condola because Condola's like, all I did was help Issa plan this block party. Without me, that'd be trash. And Lawrence, you got in your feelings when I called you out on do you still like Issa, and like basically couldn't handle it. Cause like after I Condola, I'm like, yo, I got a house. I don't need this right now. And like Condola to me is like, I'm like, what did Condola do wrong? I don't know what I don't know why.
She's not Issa. It's the same thing with the Issa and Molly. It's
right,
the same thing.
Issa.
It's just like even easier because with Molly, I like Molly. I love their friendship. As broken and twisted as it is, I'm happy when they're happy. That's enjoyable to watch. There was nothing, whatever with this. Like, it was just kind of like, and I struggled with how painful it was for Issa to kind of watch them be together and still, it was like a part of like her changing her life a little bit. And Condola really hadn't done anything wrong and she liked Condola, but there is still multiple things happening at the same time. And that was painful to have to like sit through that and push through that. And I thought she did a really good job. And so I think just for no reason except that I'm just Issa high.
But I also was like, here's what hurt, right? Because in my mind, I'm like, yo, you got the perfect job. Maybe you don't take that perfect job because you want to stay close in LA with your child. So maybe you don't take that perfect job. And I'm saying to myself, yo, you didn't even want a serious relationship with me. And here we are having a baby together. That would like, you didn't even want me for real. Why? So yeah.
But she said, something happened before. That's not an option for me. So whether you want to be around or not, I'm good. She said, I'm good.
No,
which is also such a like an.
Lawrence is gonna be like,
because Lawrence it's not gonna be a deadbeat dad.
No.
And it's such a weird conversation ender. Like, oh, you're upset at this. You don't got to be there. Even come on, that's not an option for him.
But that
shouldn't be an option for him.
No, but that was a moment even in directing her that I was like, hey, because Condola's pretty measured as a character. She's pretty like polished and pretty, usually like pretty together. And so I was like, when you come over, I said, let's just try a take where you're like pretty measured and you're pretty like staying on point. Like you probably rehearsed this before you came over here. You want to make sure that all your words are precise. But I was like, as you're watching him, I was like, whatever moment you decide, take a moment and kind of let him in. Like, let him, like, you're being very measured, but also understand this is hard for him too. And any moment you feel you want to let him in, let him in. you know, and so she did on the line, and it was so great. She let him in on like, I know this is a lot, and I don't want you to feel like I trapped you. And Jay gave such a great look of like, really
trapping me, dog.
And then she just steeled up again, like, see, that's what I get for letting
I tried, right?
Yeah, I tried. And she closed up again so tight, and I was like, that take, I was like, that's the take right there. She was great. And when Jay gave her that look of like, you're not trying to trap me, he just turned and looked at her like, shut the F up. You stop. Like, I don't need this right now. His look was great. I was like,
you know what? I felt like this let me in. I know several people on the Lawrence side, and I know a couple people on the Condola side of this scenario. And I felt like it let me into what may have happened. Because I've had boys come to me afterwards with the frustration of hell. Like,
same.
And some of it isn't anger. Some of it is just like defeated before they pick themselves up and say, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be a great dad. I'm gonna do. But you can't help but just have an initial feeling. And so I've seen it before.
Yeah, of course. So real.
Molly,
so that was devastating.
Look like y'all ain't ish.
No, I mean, what does he do now? You know, it's like, what do you do now? You know, what do you do? Everybody's got to lock it up and be good parents. I also don't feel as bad for Lawrence as I think Sean may want me to, because I get how weird it feels to be on one hand of a situation where you're like, I have no say in this, but you did have a say. And it was in the past. And I feel like birth control is often, and we don't know what happened. We talked about this a little bit, but it's like so often like very heavy, especially in like a somewhat serious one-on-one, it's very heavily on the woman. And then at the end, that decision is on the woman too. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I thought we were careful usually means we, like, I'm talking about what you were doing.
You know what that means.
Right, exactly. So I was like, oh, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So.
But then after that, you go to the end, and it's almost like Issa and Molly coming together with their tails in between their legs a little bit, saying, we need each other.
Yeah.
They do. They both have something to lean on the other one about. And then just separate from that, I think they need a person. Yeah. Issa tried to fill it with her brother.
No.
Wasn't it?
Nah, he was like, get out of here. It wasn't on purpose to have the first season and the last episode to sort of mirror each other in the shot in the
same restaurant, right?
Why did you decide to do that?
Because we felt like that was the first. So like a lot of the shots that I took, there was like some insert shots from the very beginning that I literally just copied the shots Melina did, and I was like, because that was our first moment into seeing those two as a dynamic, as friends. So to me, it was like we were saying, oh, that'd be a great tie-in, is that the sort of full circle moment that the first moment we're introduced to their dynamic is the last moment where it's like, oh, this is where this sort of friendship, the audience got to be a part of it. And we wanted the audience to come back to, hey, this is home right here, us, this place. So I wanted to shoot some of the same shots that just kind of, even if you're not aware of it, to like take you into that, as Melina did, to take you into this world here and kind of like bring it back together as this restaurant. And also, you know, we also used the restaurant this year on purpose as a place to show separation, right? When Issa goes to see the food, Issa goes to get the food, and Molly's there, and they don't.
Oh, right.
So to me, so it was also, we used the restaurant as a divider in the series this season too. So that was, obviously was on purpose, and then we wanted to use it as a kind of a beginning, middle, and end to their arc, is in terms of them having issues with each other. So yeah.
So I was also like face on the screen trying to figure out what the arm motions and movements, like when they were talking to each other as the show was ending, like, what if I could read anything? Like, how is this conversation going? So we end with a lot of questions. We don't know if Andrew and Molly are gonna make it through this. Sean, your prediction?
I think they go through a period next season of trying to work it out. I think Molly, I thought once she said that she was going to therapy at the end of episode 7, I believe, that she would make a progressive 180 because that's what therapy is. It helps you through some of these issues. But if you don't listen to your therapist, it doesn't matter. You got to be ready. So I do feel like maybe this is the punch in the face that makes her say, I'm going to go all out and change my stubbornness. And tell me if I'm right or not. My mindset was always that Molly oftentimes is right, but her issue is how she handles it. And because of how she handles it, it makes her look wrong.
Yes, I would definitely say there's a lot of that. That's true. We've always talked about Molly as a person that feels like she's very results oriented. If I do this, I get this, right? So like in some way that has served her well as a girl who's from Florence and Crenshaw in LA, right? She's from the hood. So like I had to be very like, I do this, I get good grades, I get into Stanford, I go to law school. You know what I mean? Like if I do this, I get this, right? And I think when she feels like people don't always operate that way, it's difficult for her. And like relationships, it's not results oriented. Like you can't go through your life like that, right? And so that's one of the things that we always think that Molly wrestles with is this thing of like, I put in the work, I'm supposed to get the thing, right? Because that's how school works. That's how like work works, you know, but it doesn't work that way always. And like, I have to communicate how I feel and be vulnerable. That's an area of struggle for her because she doesn't want to be wrong because she is right a lot. So that's one of the things that we definitely wrestle with.
Next prediction, Issa and Lawrence, do they stay together? Sean?
And you put up a poll to ask what women would do. I think leave was.
No, I said anybody. I did say anybody. I didn't say specifically.
Anybody. And
what was the result? I didn't see it.
The last results I checked, I was really shocked that it was 53% said leave and 47% said stay. I was stunned that it was almost a 50-50.
That is very realistic to what people think they would do before they're in the situation. I think it would be much more skewed to stay.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I'm sorry, go. My bad.
I think that after working through the beginnings of something like that, then you have this space where you think, okay, we can make this happen. And then towards the end of a pregnancy, there's all the preparations, the doctor's appointments are different, that the need for the father, it shifts, it's a little different. Your boyfriend is a little less in your space. And I think that just becomes not realistic. But would people try? More than likely, after being with someone for 5 years and them technically not doing anything bad to you that resulted in this. Like girl Melanie should not have gotten back with Derwin. That's a total different situation. But in this, I I wouldn't be surprised if she tried it. I just don't think it's gonna be easy.
I've gotten 2 different reactions from friends I know. One was from my single friends, hell no, I'm out. Every friend I have that has a kid or with a partner who has a kid have all said she would be an idiot to leave.
Wow.
To leave this.
Well, an idiot is she can do what she wants. Issa will find somebody else if she doesn't. What is she in her late 20s, early 30s?
No, in regards to
her life would be fine if she left.
No, but they're talking about in regards to letting a kid deter you from dating the man of your dreams. Because to them, they're saying, I have a kid. If you didn't cheat on me, like you said, or do anything drastic or screw me over, this dream life rarely happens. So why would you leave your dream man over this situation? But those are people who have been in that situation or have kids, so other kids don't bother them.
Yeah, but like having a kid, so she met somebody who she was in love with and he happened to have a child, that's a totally different situation than what they're about to go through.
Fair.
That's fair. But like you said, he didn't do anything dirty to you. And your dream man doesn't just come walking in your life.
Does your dream man have somebody pregnant across town? I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's okay if that affects what you're dreaming. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but like, but okay, so we have no idea. Can I tell you what I want? I cannot wait, and I hope we get to see Lawrence tell Chad that Condola is pregnant.
Oh, we've
It's
talked
going
about
to be
it,
such a
like,
raggedy conversation, and I can't wait.
yeah, we've talked about just what was Chad's opinion of all of this.
Like, Chad's my guy, but like, and everybody has a Chad.
Oh yeah, and Neil Brown Jr. plays him so perfect. He's so good.
It's so good. It is like, how can you like a character so much that you don't see that often? But I talked about how funny East motherfucking Suh. How funny that is. Like,
he's
he
great.
is funny. God.
Listen, I know you have to go, but I have to ask you this question before you do.
Yeah.
When you have, I've never seen a show separate women and men so much. Like, show the difference in their thinking. Because I feel like a lot of times Brooke says she can identify with some of the female characters, what they do. Me, I identify with Lawrence and some of the male characters and how they act. And I think that's the reason we can pick sides of, no, I'm on Lawrence's side or I'm on Issa's side. Like, is that intentional? Where it's just like, did you guys know, like, oh, it's about to be a war because of how men and women sort of react?
Nah, we never think like that. Because, we'll be let down. Like, because we've thought before in the past, like, I think the first couple of, like, we thought, oh, this will be a hot button thing. And then it's not. And then we'd be like, this is, like, not a thing. Like, the idea that Tiffany's baby is not Derek's. We just wrote that as like an offhanded joke that like some guy in her office liked her. And then it became this thing that like, that baby is Fred's. And we were like, if we would have thought people latched on that, we would have never wrote that joke. And so you just don't know. So like, I don't think we never think anymore of like, oh, this, like, we just, to your point, we just try to write the character as they are and be motivated by what they're motivated by. And then those things. But again, we have a show that's about a lot of relationships. So then kind of, naturally you're going to have like understanding the guys. But, and that's, I think that's the beauty of having great actors like Alon Noel that plays Daniel, Kendrick that plays Nathan, and Jay that obviously
I'm so glad Daniel didn't come back. And I like Daniel's character. I like the character. But God, I just did not need any drama. I didn't need it. I didn't need him to pop up. I didn't need him to be in the set. And I was so worried about that. Like, he's going to be in the farmer's market and walk up and say hi. And it's just, I didn't need it.
No, we're not trying to take it. No, we're not trying to go that far. But I think that, like, I think you have relationships that you have, and then you're in his point of view. A lot of times, always in our show, we usually try to have like a male point of view. So you're usually can follow the guy's thinking as well, as opposed to just kind of popping in, popping out when he's with, one of our female characters. So yeah, but I don't think we ever think that way, but it's been fun to watch for sure. It's so a small window. It's a very small window into people's thinking for sure.
We enjoyed the show. This has been a really fun season. This has been a really strong season. And then also I realized I like Molly so much more than I recognized that I did that solo episode with Molly. I would have never guessed that I would have enjoyed that as much. I didn't miss Issa, which is, I'm a huge Issa fan. So this has been a really good, fun season to watch. Do you have a favorite character outside of Issa and Molly from a viewer standpoint? Chad, yeah.
Chad, he's fun to watch. He's fun to write for. And also Kelly. I mean, Kelly is just right. Natasha's funny. Natasha's everything. She's just she'll do whatever.
She said enhance.
Oh, with that. Oh, when we were filming, we got a whole bunch of stuff of her yelling enhance. I got a whole bunch of extra stuff of what she was trying to get the computer to do. It's like, it's just a computer, Kelly. It's not Minority Report. But her speaking British, her with the British accent.
The whole episode.
They're just always so fun. We're just like throwing Natasha. We're like, what about this? What about that? She's just like her being Babs. It's just all good.
Hey, I know I'm not a writer, but if you guys want to make a scene with Kelly and what's Issa's neighbor.
Oh, Doug Yoder
got together. I would love to do something like that, where it's just straight up foolery.
We talked about that. We talked about is there a thing where they've been hooking up on the low for the last couple of years?
Oh my God, that would be such a mess. Oh my goodness, that would be funny.
Yeah, we're still trying to work a way to have Kelly and Chad in the scene. We just feel also Natasha and like Kelly and Chad in the scene would be hilarious.
God, they are so funny. This is a really just all the characters. Even like for a second, like because he wasn't in this episode, how funny Doug Yoda is.
Doug Yoda's like Tristan is so funny. We always try to work.
So
She has lived there.
funny.
We always try to make sure we have Tristan in a season because he's just hilarious.
It's so funny. Well, thank you for doing this with us. We always kind of like talk about your tweets and what, in the little recap, and this has been really fun for us, especially since we're like stuck at home. So thank you for coming on and settling in a couple arguments.
Thank you for you guys for like all you guys do. It's so much fun to watch you guys every Sunday. So when you're in LA, Sean, you have to come to set and the same with you, Brooke. We'll have you down when we start filming.
I would love to.
I appreciate it, man. There's gonna be a lot more arguments coming up.
I know. See you next year. Can't wait. Right. Yes, exactly.